Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Mondays with Mendy. Today, I apologize, we are running a couple minutes late, but it is Purim, so that's bound to happen after non-stop partying. Hopefully, you had a wonderful Purim. I know here at Chabad, we had an amazing Purim, a beautiful Minyan Shabbat morning, a reading of the Megillah, Motzei Shabbat Saturday night, and then an amazing, awesome Purim at the stadium event yesterday at Ceviche with over 75 people coming and participating in the holiday. And if you were there, great. If you weren't, you'll get the next one. But today we continue with our weekly discussion, our weekly webinar, and today we're going to be covering the topic of kosher, what you eat, because kosher really could apply to many different things. The word kosher actually has nothing to do with food. Absolutely nothing to do with food. And it's funny because most people think that kosher eating is purely related to health. Today we're going to dispel that notion, that theory, and talk about why we eat kosher, the origin of the tradition, and why it's still pertinent and relevant in today in the 21st century. That's going to be the focus of today's discussion. But in order to begin, you really have to understand, what does the word kosher mean? The word kosher does not mean food. It does not mean healthy. All it means is fit or proper. That is the literal definition. Typically, when someone says kosher, they're referring to food, and what they're trying to say is this food is proper or fit for human consumption. But essentially, a person could be a kosher person, a business deal could be a kosher business deal. Anything can be kosher if it's fit and proper. And there's a story told about a Rabbi Goldberg, who was visiting with Father Sherman, the local Catholic priest, at the town's picnic on July 4th in honor of our independence. And they're sitting at the picnic there, and Father Sherman starts to tease Rabbi Goldberg, and he says, "Rabbi Goldberg, do you see how delicious that baked ham looks?" He says, "I'm telling you, it really looks very succulent. Are you sure you don't want to have a piece?" And he keeps going on and continues to egg him and entice him. And finally, the rabbi looks at Father Sherman and says, "You know what? I will eat that piece of ham. You know what I'm going to do it, Father? At your wedding." So oftentimes we look at another person's diet, whether it be a diet of food or it might be a diet, a regimen on how they live their life, and the restrictions that they apply to themselves. And to you, they may seem strange. Why would you put yourself under restrictions? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you limit your opportunities? But in reality, everybody has restrictions. Whether they're religious or not, whether they're spiritual or not, whether they're health related, we all have certain things that we decide we can do and we can't do. Every human being puts those restrictions upon themselves. So let's not kid ourselves into saying that someone that chooses to keep kosher is limiting their options and opportunities, which is completely opposite of what society does. Because society limits themselves in hundreds of different ways. So we're trying to remove some of the stigma that exists around keeping kosher. Why is it any different than any other diet a human being subjects themselves to? And we all know there are so many different diets. You can be on the South Beach diet and the Atkins diet, and there's the caveman diet, and there's low protein, high carb, low protein. There's Weight Watchers, there's every single type of mishigas you can imagine. So why has kosher been seen as such an antiquated form of eating, of human consumption? The Torah itself does not specify the reason for keeping kosher. And the fact that it isn't specific about why we keep kosher creates a very strong mystique around the practice and the tradition, which has allowed people to hypothesize that kosher is purely related to health reasons. And it couldn't be further from the truth. When you talk about kosher food, there are a couple of different factors. When it comes to animals, animals have to have two signs. They must chew their cud, which means they eat their food, and then they regurgitate their food and re-chew the food. And they have to have split hooves, like a cow, for example. Birds have different, they have different signs. Birds cannot be predators. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And fish, of course, have to have fins and scales. Those are the signs that make an animal kosher. And then, of course, we have the rules of milk and meat that can't be mixed together. That's what kosher is. And so, over time, this idea that kosher is purely related to health has been created, partially because it frees us of any obligation to keep kosher in today's society. Medicine has advanced to the point where we can eat things we weren't comfortable eating 100 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or even 2,000 years ago. So maybe kosher is no longer relevant. So before we make the case for why we eat kosher, we're going to explore a very strange and peculiar quote from the Talmud. The Talmud says, in the name of the rabbi named Hanan, so there's a rabbi named Hanan, Rabbi Hanan said, there are 3 types of dreams which signify peace. So peace is a very important quality. People are always looking for peace, not only peace in a cosmic sense, peace in the world around us, but internal peace. Because when a person finds true peace in their own personal lives, they find happiness, they find connection. Everybody would love to find peace. So 3 types of dreams that refer to peace. The first is a river, a bird, and a kettle. And there are different verses from different parts of the Torah that create these parallels, these connections between a river. For example, it says, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river. And different verses for the kettle and for the bird that highlight the connection between these 3 terms, bird, kettle, river, and the concept of peace. But what is the deeper significance behind these ideas? Why is a bird related to peace? Why is a river reflective of peace? What is the connection between a kettle that cooks water and makes it hot and peace? We're going to take that question and put it on the side for right now and get into the details of why we keep kosher. And towards the end of our discussion today, I will return to that verse and make sense out of what seems a very mysterious and enigmatic statement. So as I said, kosher signs for animals, split hooves, chew their cud, fins and scales, these are generally the signs that exist. But it doesn't really say why these animals specifically are kosher or are not kosher. That is left to us to develop ideas and theories. And we always are developing ideas and theories. And that's the beauty of the Torah, that it has place for each person to contribute their own intellect and build upon its masterpiece. Now, when it talks about creepy crawlies, insects, and the such, it tells us, of course, that you are not allowed to eat insects. We can't eat things that creep along on the ground. But here, it actually does specify a reason for why we stay away from the insect community. It says, I am the Lord your God. I made you holy, and therefore, just like I am holy, I want you to be holy. I'm the God that took you out of Egypt, and therefore, you should be holy, just like I'm holy. Okay. So why do we keep kosher? Because God is holy. God chose the Jewish people for a unique path and mission in life. That's why God took the Jewish people out of Egypt. And therefore, as an expression of our commitment and our connection to God, please keep kosher so that you can be holy as well. Fine. Perfect. But being holy is not a rational idea. Right? What does it mean to be holy? Be holy means to be different, to elevate yourself beyond what the rest of society does. It still does not give us a rationale and a logical explanation for why we have to keep kosher. It just tells us, here's God. God says he's different, removed from everything else in society, and therefore, because you want to be connected to God, you're God's people, you're chosen for a unique path, therefore, you also will remove yourself from what the rest of society eats. We know that in the Torah, not all of the traditions are readily understood. Many of them are. And they fall into different categories. There's the categories of mishpatim, laws, which are things that we would figure out on our own. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, etc. Then we have edut, testimonials, like putting on tefillin, keeping Shabbat. These are mitzvot that we do that highlight our relationship with God. Just like God worked for 6 days and rested on the seventh, so too we work for 6 days and rest on the seventh. Testimonials, witnesses to our relationship. Then the third and the most difficult part are chukim, statutes. Why are they called statutes? Just like a king that issues a decree. It is not up to the subjects of the kingdom to debate the rationale, the logic of the decree. They have to do it. They have to follow it. Same too, God created the world. Therefore, even though we don't understand this third group of mitzvot, we do it anyways, the group of statutes. And kosher is part of that third group, part of the group of statutes. So there really is no perfect explanation clearly articulated in the Torah for why we keep kosher. That being said, Jewish people obviously have dealt with this over 2,000 years, and some of the great scholars did come up with theories that might explain the benefits of keeping kosher. So it's not a reason for the mitzvah, but rather a benefit developed from keeping kosher. The first is Maimonides, the Rambam, who writes in his book called Moreh Nevuchim, The Guide to Perplexed, he writes, food that is forbidden by law is unwholesome. There is nothing among the forbidden kinds of food whose injurious character is doubted, except pork and forbidden fats. So Rambam goes in this direction, the health direction, the one that we really negated in the beginning of our discussion. That's what Maimonides says. It's related to health. The foods that are not kosher are not good for you. We want you to be healthy, so therefore you eat these foods. The only one that does have nutritional value is pork. And then he goes on to say that even the pork is really not good for you because pigs are notoriously filthy animals, and therefore if they were kosher, you would invite them in. Remember, historically, you kept your own animal in your home, and then when you wanted to eat it, you took it to the butcher. So imagine if you would have pigs running around all of the Jewish areas, they would become uncleanly very, very quickly. So there's another reason pigs are not clean, and therefore we stay away from them. But primarily the reason for kosher is because of its health benefits. This is what Maimonides says. Nachmanides, his contemporary, the Ramban, he continues this notion, he expands upon this theory and says fish, it's the same idea with fish. Because fish that are kosher are fish that generally live close to the surface of the water, and therefore they grow from the oxygen that they get being so close to the surface. On the other hand, fish that are generally not kosher are fish that lay on the bottom of the seabed, of the sea ocean, and there the water is murky, it's not as clean, it's not irrigated and oxygenated like the water up at the top of the ocean. And so that's why they're not kosher. So Maimonides and Nachmanides basically take the route kosher is primarily for health reasons. Even though they are not saying that kosher is only for health, they're saying the natural benefit from keeping kosher is health. Now, if the health reasons change, would you change kosher? No, of course not. Maimonides and Nachmanides would never say that. However, that is the primary benefit for an individual when they keep kosher. But again, there is no source for this in the Torah. The Torah does not say that. It does not subject itself to that. And there are issues. There are real serious problems for this. Number one, is the Torah just a book of medicine? I mean, why don't we see the Torah coming and telling us not to do lots of other things that might be harmful to our health? It doesn't say in the 5 books of Moses about all of the other things that we have to stay away from that could be dangerous. Only food. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that the Torah doesn't forbid poisonous plants and herbs. They can still be kosher, you can still eat them, even though they can be very detrimental to your health. So why don't we see consistency? And finally, number three, how is it that people that are not Jewish eat food that's not kosher and they live what we see as healthy lives, fully functional, stable, healthy lives? So something really doesn't add up here. When you make the case, excuse me, when you make the case that kosher food is just about being healthy. Of course the Torah wants you to be healthy, and we place life above all else in the Torah, which is why if someone's life is threatened, they have to transgress any tradition they need to in order to stay alive. So that's not an issue. The Torah values life. But is the benefit of kosher just to make us healthy, or is there something deeper. And finally, one of the rabbis, Rabbi Yitzchak, says that if it was purely based on health, just like certain poisons are not healthy, you mix them together with other materials, other ingredients, and they can become potent but safe. Same too, maybe if unkosher food is not healthy, mix it with some kosher food, and then you'll be able to eat it, no problem. So kosher really is not related to health. There are certain benefits, but that's not the real benefit. The benefit is the character of a human being. When you eat something, it becomes part of you. It's one of the only things you do in the physical world that literally attach themselves to you. If you ride a bike, if you play sports, if you have intimacy with your wife, it remains apart from you. What you've done remains apart from you. But when you eat, it literally becomes part of you. That burger is now your hand. It is now you. So the character of what you're eating, the character of the animal that you are consuming, is very important when you're looking to build and refine your own personal character. You only want to experience positive things, therefore you should only be eating and consuming positive things so that your character, as it absorbs the character of the animal, stays pure. That's the reason that we eat kosher food. That's the definition. And now, we see that quite clearly with birds. It says the principal sign of a non-kosher bird is the fact that it is a predator. Most non-kosher birds are non-kosher because they're predators, because they're vultures. And we don't want to consume that kind of animal and then internalize those behavior traits. So we stay away from them. Same thing could be applied to many of the different animals, both fish-wise and animal-wise. So when you consider what you're eating, you change your diet completely. Now, things that weren't important to you before are very important to you now. The same way we concern ourselves with organic food, we don't want to eat pesticide, we don't want to eat food that was created with animal cruelty, we don't want to eat food that's great, we want animals that are grass-fed instead of grain-fed. These are all of the different concerns we have when we eat, and the same thing applies to eating kosher food. We want to make sure the character fits with our spiritual identity. So therefore, kosher food has nothing to do with health, and that's why non-Jewish people don't have to keep kosher food, can eat non-kosher food and still stay very healthy, because their spiritual character is different than ours. And so therefore, they don't feed it the same way. They have to feed it with other things. If you want to have a positive spirit, if you want to have a pure spirit, if you want to be able to look out on life and be happy and grateful for who you are, you have to, at some point in your life, you have to make sure that your entire existence is surrounded by what you want to be. If you want to be successful, you surround yourself with successful people. If you want to be smart, surround yourself with smart people. If you want to be funny, surround yourself with funny people. The environment you create will ultimately express itself upon you as an individual. The same thing is with what you eat. If you want to be a healthy person, eat healthy food. If you want to be a spiritual person, eat spiritual food. Food that fits with your spiritual identity. Who knows what fits with your spiritual identity? The God that made you. And that's why this diet is the right diet for you. Now we have multiple explanations on why we keep kosher, whether it's related to health benefits or it's related to the general benefit of eating spiritually. But now we're going to take another look. Oh, pardon me. Like I said, Purim was a lot of fun, but a long night. When we eat something, it becomes part of us, part and parcel of who we are, absolutely. So what's the significance in eating? Why do we eat altogether? Is it simply to get fuel? Couldn't God decide and design a simpler fuel system for a human being? A dispensary, take a pill, eat it, and you're done. Why do you have to have this whole concept of eating food over time and the engagement and the activity that you need in order to eat? You have to prepare the meal, etc., etc. The reason is very simple. Because Judaism believes we are here on earth to transform the physical world around us. Eating is part of that process. Not only is it part of the process, it's an important part of the process. Because eating allows us to truly take something that completely is physical and not wholly in any way, shape, or form. Just an animal. and bring it into our domain in a process that elevates it and makes it special. Makes it different than all of the other foods in the world. Makes it holy. So if you eat your food like a regular human being, and you eat whatever you eat, and you know, whether it's kosher, it's not kosher, you eat a small meal, etc. Okay, fine, you ate your food, you got your fuel. But did you have a holy experience? No. It was just normal. And that's where Judaism is trying to take us. To a point where every time we eat, we sleep, we do something physical, it's an opportunity to actually be holy. To say, this is not the way the rest of the world does it. I'm unique, I'm special. I do it slightly different because my goal is not to just live, but to transform. It's not just to exist, it's to inspire. That's why I'm here. That's the position that we have to take. Which is why, for example, the rabbis would say, you shouldn't say pork is repulsive. Don't say pork is repulsive. Say no. I'm sure that ham, cheeseburgers, and pork are very, very good. However, I have a responsibility. I have a different calling to be a part of the Jewish people, a chosen people. And my job here on earth is to show everyone how I can transform objects around me into spirituality, including food, which is why I believe what the good book tells me. I believe what the Torah tells me. And if God, who made me, said, this is not good for my spiritual character, I'm not going to eat it. And I'm going to signify that spirituality and godliness express itself throughout every aspect of our being, including our food. That's what I'm going to do. Because only through that process can we truly bring about the transformation we want. When we show the world that spiritual and physical fit like a glove, hand in hand. They're not apart from each other. They're right there connected. And we're so close to making this a reality every time we do eat kosher. Or we put on tefillin. Every mitzvah that we do with the physical species of the world is a transformation, taking us one step closer to where we want to get at the end. So here we have three different approaches to kosher food. We have the business approach. The business approach is the approach that eating food, like Maimonides says, is about being healthy. God wants us to be healthy. Right? So therefore, God says, eat these foods, it'll keep you healthy. And we want to be healthy, so we tell God, all right, we'll eat these foods, we'll make a blessing, whatever you want. And we've got a partnership. God provides the food, we recognize where it comes, we say thank you to God, we continue to get our food. That was the health approach, the business approach. Then we have the self-improvement approach. Self-improvement approach is an approach that says that no, eating food isn't about purely... It isn't about keeping healthy. Eating kosher food is about connecting spiritually. Right? We want to connect spiritually, so therefore God said we should be holy, and God gave us opportunities for us to be holy, and one of those is to eat certain foods. So it's not about health, it's about spirituality. Perfect. Then there's a third approach. The third approach is the Hasidic philosophy approach, that every human being has innate desires and tendencies. We each do. And don't pretend like we don't. We do. How we control those urges and tendencies defines who we are. If we're able to subjugate our own desire and will for something greater than ourselves, it re-identifies us. So I might think I'm Mendy, and Mendy is smart, funny, good-looking, right? Great rabbi. I'm sure you all feel that way. And because I see myself as my own creation, that's who I am. That's my identity. All of a sudden comes along someone and says, Mendy, no, there's a God in this world. So therefore, it's not about you and your talents and your skills and abilities. It's about how best you can connect with God and therefore channel that energy into the world around you. That's what you're here to do. And the first thing you have to do to accomplish that objective, Mendy, you have to limit your own ego. You have to nullify your great love of yourself so that you can focus on a cause and a goal that's bigger than yourself. And that's what takes place when we keep kosher. Because when we keep kosher, what we're saying, we're not saying I don't want all of those things. We're saying, no, I do want to eat all those things. I want the shellfish. I want the pork. I want all of it. But I know that my own personal desires aren't as important as what's needed on a cosmic global scale. So therefore, I'm going to limit my own tendencies. I'm going to control my proclivities, my desires, in order that I should follow what God told me and bring more perfection to the world around us. Let's now travel back to that verse about peace. So we said there are three terms refer to peace: the river, the kettle, and the bird. Okay? And when you see these in a dream, it's a sign of peace. So let's take each one for a moment. The river represents the business deal, a relationship with God that's like a business deal. God does for us, and we do back for God. Remember, God gives us food, right? And we keep kosher, and we make God happy. Well, tit for tat, everybody gets what they want. That's one perspective. And of course, it's a limited perspective, as you can all imagine. Relationships built purely on business deals are very fickle, here one day, gone the next. A stronger relationship is the partnership one. That's peace as reflected by the kettle. Why? What is the kettle? A kettle is a unit, a vessel, which takes which takes cold water, and you apply heat under the kettle, and the kettle fuses the heat of the flames with the water inside of it, making the water warm. A partnership. It's a partnership between the kettle, the fire, and the water to create warm water to make you happy. That is a relationship. That is a partnership with God. God gives us certain tools to make the world a spiritual place, namely food, and we use those tools. We use food in order to make the world a more spiritual place, to signify the connection between these physical and spiritual realities. Great. We have a beautiful partnership. And partnerships work well sometimes, not as well in other times. And oftentimes they work well for a little bit and then they fall apart. So it's not the ultimate relationship. The ultimate relationship is the bird. Peace reflected by the bird, a connection born through commitment, discipline and commitment. That's the ultimate in a relationship, whether it's with your family, relationship with your spouse. That's where you want to go, to get to a point where you're so committed to that person that it's created a connection between the two of you that can never be shaken or broken in any way, shape, or form. So why is this reflected by the bird? Look at a bird. A bird is a unique animal. On the one hand, it operates like an animal, right? It's like any other mammal, can walk along on the earth, and it feels very, very comfortable. Then all of a sudden the bird takes off. It can fly. It can raise itself above the earth, completely above the earth, to the point where the entire earth looks like a speck of dust. Maybe not the entire earth, but things look like a speck of dust compared to the bird when it's flying at its maximum altitude. That ability that the bird has to fuse two completely disparate, separate realities, the reality of above and the reality of below. It can live its life in the air and on earth, and it fuses these together to create a new category of birds. A new category of creatures that can exist in these two very different spheres. That is the ultimate fusion that a person wants to see in a relationship. A man and wife come together, they form a new entity, a hybrid, a masculine, feminine hybrid. And as one unit now bridged together as this hybrid, you can emote better, you can intellectualize better, you have the strengths and the qualities from each one of the partners. That's the ultimate relationship. And the same thing is in our relationship with God. You can have a relationship with God that's like a business deal. God, you give me $100, I'll give $50 to charity, right? Or we can have a relationship with God as a partnership. God, you give me the tools that I need to be more spiritual, I will become more spiritual. That's obviously a step up. We have mitzvot, we have Torah, I will study, I'll become more connected. Then we have the third approach, the bird approach. The bird approach is when you become so interconnected with your faith and your spirituality, it's not about what God gives you and doesn't give you. It's not even about the tools. It's not about anything more than this essential bond that exists between the two of you. And kosher from that perspective is not about health. It's not about spiritual growth. It's not about transformation. It's about recognizing God tells me to do something, I do it because it's not about me. Life isn't just about what Mendy wants. And in that simple declaration, there's profound meaning and significance. So in conclusion, keeping kosher is essential. Not just because of health reasons, and there are health benefits to keeping kosher, but not just for that. Because it's a way we create a bond with our Creator. It's a way that we transform the physical world around us by saying, no, I don't just eat any animal. Because eating isn't just about putting food into my body and giving me energy. It's about transforming the world around me. And I know certain things are transformable and certain things are not, because the Torah tells me. And even most importantly, eating kosher is about an essential connection between you and God, that if God tells you to eat something, you do it because you believe that God created the world. And that discipline gives you great focus in your life. As always, I want to thank you for joining us this week for Mondays with Mendy. Feel free to email me with any questions, comments, critiques that you might have on today's discussion. The email address is askmendy@gmail.com, askmendy@gmail.com. Next week, next Monday, we'll continue our weekly talk on the prenatal academy. What happens to a child, baby, infant, before it is born. A very interesting discussion. Don't mix it next week at 12 o'clock. Additionally, 1 month from today is Passover. You know you need a Seder. We've got one for you. So take a look at our website, chabadsouttampa.com, or email me for information about the Seder Under the Stars, which is going to be held the first night of Passover, exactly 1 month from today. I believe it's April 12th or 13th. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Au revoir.